Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the anime Kimi ni Todoke seasons 1 through 3 on Netflix. And I thought that this show was okay. I had enjoyment from it. It had a very kind of similar premise to Komi Can't Communicate. Now granted, I understand that this anime came out long before Komi, but the thing is, I think that Comey kind of executed itself a little bit better. Whereas this one, I do like that they went with like the romance and the main character Sawako kind of coming out of her shell and getting in with her class a little bit more. I mean, especially when they pretty much would nickname her Sadako from The Ring because of how kind of creepy and gloomy she looked. But my main issues come with this series in that of pacing and execution, and it kind of progresses through each kind of season. Like, I really like the first season because we got a lot of different kind of moving parts and everything kind of going on. Everything kind of building off of each other, and that one was about 24, 25 episodes. Numbering's kind of a little bit weird. Season 2 was about 12 to 13 episodes, and it felt like it just took a lot on this one central conflict. And then season 3, of course, popped off yesterday, and I was able to finish it. It's 5 hour-long episodes, and that's the biggest kind of issue of, like, us, like, alright, what the fuck? Because it then really affects the flow of what's kind of going on. It's like, okay, we keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Now, granted, if the story needs that, the characters need that, that's fine. This presented problems in that the main character of Sawako and Kazuhaya, the main kind of couple group, get the most kind of screen time. However, we then decide to go off with certain kind of other ones and actually have stories done with them as well. Mainly Chizuru and Ryo. But granted, they had more sprinkling and better stuff going on because it connected to the main kind of conflicts that were going on with Sawako and Kazuhaya. I'm going to remember that name all the time for Kazuhaya because of how this one character Joe in the anime would always go Kazuhaya. It's like, oh shit. Now granted that's in the English dub, but he did it well enough to get stuck into my fucking head. So let's get into the details of the main kind of story and conflicts that are kind of going on, and then why this kind of structuring has gone completely not only bonkers, and also that it took so fucking long to get, like, the third season. Well, let's first get into, like, the really good stuff. Music-wise and animation-wise, it works very well. I love the chibiification that happens when we're getting into the comedy bits. The comedy bits were kind of, like, the best stuff for me. Most of the romance I'm fine with. I'm good with the well-executed romance. I guess the main thing is that I didn't do any of this shit in high school, so it's more just like, okay, what the fuck's kind of going on here? That mainly goes along with Kazuhaya and Sawako's kind of stuff more than like Chizuru and Ryo, and then when we get into Ayane and Kento later on. It's just, what the fuck? So, those are the good bits. Like, we got the same voice actors, we got the same production company and everything. That's awesome to be able to go that long and then get the people back. Top notch. Let's see here. So, we start off, we see Sawako kind of like working away and figuring out what's kind of going on before Kazuhaya pretty much like pops in and tries to pretty much draw her out and everything. He's drawn to her. At the beginning, we think as more of kind of an outcast person, but then starts kind of bringing her into other kind of bits. They change their whole seating arrangement. Oh yeah, and we get this Arai kind of PE teacher. His balancing actually works out well enough. It's mainly Sawako's and Kazuhaya's at the end that starts to go a little bit like, what? As he is just a asshole teacher that sometimes spouts wisdom, recognizes that fact, like, I can do this again, but then always kind of overplays his hand. Yeah, it was interesting to have him But we see Sawako kind of pushed out of her comfort zones. We see in the beginning of the first season where she is working with Chizuru and Ayane, that's how it needs to be said, Ayane. And getting introduced to them and getting friends and working with like the whole class. She goes from being this like, if you look at her in the eye, you're gonna get cursed and whatnot, which the PE teacher RI is like, ah shit, that fucking happened to me, to where they think that she's like an exorcist. She could give you good fortune. Actually, a really kind of cool bit that we learn is that she's a really effective teacher with the notes that she gives with Chizuru, and that being built up to where she wants to be a teacher at the end of the series is actually very well done, and I love that character development for her. But we see her developing feelings for Kazuhaya. We see Kazuhaya doing the same thing. We see her introduced. We get the first kind of bit of her getting her friends and them understanding. The biggest kind of thing that I like is the whole bit of like miscommunication and people actually talking things through. That is one of the big kind of positives I love for this series, that also kind of connects up with Komi, but this goes more into actual technical details, where somebody's spreading rumors about Sawako, and that she's spreading rumors about Chizuru and Ayane, and we learned that it is someone that likes Kazuhaya. Kurumi, who, well, from first bit, you're like, something's off with this one, and it's like, oh, she's one of those possessives, and obsessives kind of one, and the thing is, we kind of have Sawako and Kazuhaya have that obsessiveness later on in the third season. It actually kind of freaked me out. I'm like, I understand this, and I'm glad they're kind of talking about it, about what these kind of relationships can be like, but I'm like, you guys probably should break up. It's kind of really weird that we got to that point where at first I'm like, oh, I really like that they're kind of getting together and everything, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like a really weird problem that you're probably going to have to deal with, Kazuhaya and Sawako. What the fuck? Of being that, like, possessive of people. And seeing Sawako dealing with Kurumi and dealing with her in her own way, and Sawako learning that Ryu loves and only has eyes for Chizuru, and their kind of whole relationship that we don't really get full understanding of until season 3, where they pretty much devote episodes to, and then just essentially plot dump because we have to do this at this point. I don't know if they're making a 4th season, but I'm kind of okay at this point. I'm like, I'm all right. I've got my fill of this, and I'm moving on. But we see that that Kurumi overstepped, and because she was pretty much trying to make it like that, Sawako would go after Ryu, and she doesn't have feelings for Ryu. I mean, she has, like, Ryu saved her from getting beamed in the face with a baseball. That it's like, there's more that Kazuhaya has done. And seeing them kind of build up until we get to the confession part in the 2nd season. Now, let's see, what kind of, any kind of other things were going on in the 1st season? Because I really do want to get to what happened in the 2nd season. Ooh. Because we see them kind of going on, we see them dealing with the puppy Maru, which is like growling at Sawako. We deal with them doing a whole kind of bit with a Christmas party and Sawako kind of coming into herself, but of course her parents then understand. It's like, you haven't really done this stuff, but that's okay. Go and like do all that. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Let's see here. I don't really think. And the thing is, we had gotten everything going on with Chizuru, and that she had an unrequited love with Ryu's brother Toru. That whole spiel getting like cracked out is like, okay. And then that kind of only gets really kind of resolved in the 3rd season, Oh yeah, and then the Christmas stuff. And having the whole birthday date with Sawako and Kazehaya, where they go to the shrine and everything. Ayane and Chizuru kind of like setting that up was actually pretty effective. I kind of like seeing. It's really kind of funny. The main thing that drew me in with this was like the relationship between Sawako, Ayane, and Chizuru. Like if they were just doing weird kind of stuff and made it into pretty much a comedy bit, I think I kind of would have liked that anime a little bit better. Now, granted, first season, I'm like, yeah, alright. Second season, we start figuring out what's kind of going on. Let's see here. We get the whole kind of Valentine's Day bit. Trying to figure out what's going on. Kurumi pretty much sabotaging Sawako into not giving her chocolates to Kazehaya because she tells that if anybody that likes Kazehaya gives the chocolates, he rejects it and everything. It's like, ah, shit, because she's thinking about that, and he's like, why didn't Sawako give me any chocolates or whatnot? And it just leads to this kind of like building up of where we get to a point where they both technically confess to each other, but yet they both think that they've rejected each other. It was like seeing the embodiment of like a double negative in action. It was really kind of like awe-inspiring, if that makes sense. It's like, you're both saying that you like each other, but that you like each other in different ways. However, I do like to, like, I think it's an actual great kind of prime example of what can happen miscommunication-wise, where Sawako's pretty much like, I love you. But she doesn't say that. She's like, I like you, and the way I like you is probably different than the way you like me, Kazehaya. And it's like, and he's like, ah, shit. And she's like, ah, shit. And it's like, where they both pretty much come to the conclusions that they've rejected each other. I haven't really seen that in any kind of romance anime. Normally it's like, okay, I like you, you don't like me. Ah, fuck. You, and on that kind of thing. Or they both like each other. I've never seen this kind of done to this kind of point. And that's pretty much the central kind of conflict that pops off. And then Kurumi, of course, popping up and being like, what the fuck are you doing? And everybody else is like, what? And Ayane is like, I leave you alone for 2 minutes. And what the fuck happens? Because, this got brought into effect because Kento is pretty much doing his own kind of thing of trying to see if he's like into Sawako. He was a weird kind of character. Like, he pretty much gets paired with Ayane in the third season, and it's mainly just because I think the author felt bad, like if she had like if Ayane got like just thunderjacked into Joe, like, because she got stuck with him during like New Year's on the one thing. It's like, oh sweet Jesus, please don't do that. And it's like, okay, he's the only other pretty much feature identifiable character, so like who the fuck else would Ayane kind of come into? And that's the whole kind of problem, because he is introduced later and they don't do enough work for them to have a really kind of good kind of chemistry, in my opinion. Now granted, if you're going like people that don't really know that much about each other, because the most of the main kind of relationships that we've seen in this series are Sawako and Kazehaya, and then the like longest term relationship of like Chizuru and Ryo, who are pretty much been brought up like siblings, and then figuring out their feelings for each other. Well, Ryu loves her, that's what he knows. And then finally kind of dealing with their whole kind of spiel in the third season and getting together as well. Ayane is a really interesting one because we get into her stuff. In the first season, she had a boyfriend that was really obsessive and possessive and hit her. And then she broke up with him. And then we get the whole thing of them going to Okinawa. And she gets into a relationship with this Mogi dude. Mogi? A fuckboy one. How about we go with that? Mogi. Mogi, I think, is... yeah. Pronunciation more than anything. But he was pretty much just using her to get to sex, pretty much. And then she figures this out and is like, fuck you, and dumps him on the vacation. Which I'm like, yes, that's the correct response. And then she breaks down, and I'm like, yeah, that's a correct response too. And Kento pretty much comforts her, even though he's got like all these groups of Kento girls. It's really kind of strange. And then we get to the whole thing of them finally getting together. Kazahaya and Sayako, they're able to clear up the communication in season 2, and then they're doing their kind of bits in the 3rd season. And it's just because at the end of the 2nd season, they pretty much go on their first date. She gives the hat that she had made that her dad accidentally jacked, and giving the chocolates and everything. I'm like, Valentine's Day was a long time ago. And I know you made those chocolates, but sweet fuck, man, that's old chocolate, man. And I'm like, yeah, Kazahaya would eat it, and then he would get the shits. But that's neither here nor there. It's not really important to the story. It's just the things that pop up in my mind of like, alright. And then we get the 5 episodes that we have to just then kind of power through, because there's not really a lot of flow for them, because the other ones you're like, oh, okay, you can have some ups and downs, you got some plotting and pacing. Now they're like longer, and you just dump certain kind of shit. We see that they're having, at first, they're pretty good, but then we see that Kazahaya pretty much has a hard time controlling himself and decides to pretty much put distance between them. And that's pretty much central kind of conflict that's pretty much going on up until the last episode, as well as they've pretty much gotten back to Christmas again. He's decided to do the whole kind of bit of them doing a Christmas party, because Sawako was not there at the last one. She came up at the end and spent a little bit of time with Kazahaya, exchanging gifts and stuff like that, and building their relationship. Here we see that he's obsessive and possessive, and like has to fight himself to not just pull her close and everything like that. I'm like, it sounded more creepy to me. I'm like, I understand this is trying to be like, his feelings are so strong that he wouldn't be able to keep his hands off of her. And I'm like, okay, now that only works if she's consenting with that as well. And I do like that he doesn't go complete nuts, and we don't have a complete blow-up situation like that. But I'm just like, and they want to just possess each other by themselves pretty much. I'm like, okay, I understand that kind of love, but that's dangerous kind of shit. I'm like, woo. But I do like that we're showcased that the rest of the families and all of the people, we do see that Kento confesses to Ayane, gets together with her at the party, same with Ryu and Chizuru, and then they spend the next day with Sawako's family and everything, and her dad understanding and being like, wow, this is great, and saying that like they're welcome to spend the time with them, and that the father is saying to Sawako that she can go with her friends, but she's like, no, I want to do this with you, and make like noodles and shit for him. It's like, okay, go for that. It's just really, I liked it in the beginning, and then it just kind of got a little bit uneven, and I think that the main miscommunication took too much of the time in the 2nd season, especially when we got more condensed episodes. And then the 3rd season, it would go around and focus on certain kind of aspects. We get a pretty much giant plot dump on Chizuru's kind of thing. We get the whole thing going on in Okinawa, and how Kazahaya and Sawako almost kissed. The whole plot development with Ayane and her understanding of going out with all these people and going out with all these guys and not not loving them and not having those kind of feelings for them, and wondering if she's kind of broken and everything. And that really had me connect with her as a character. It's like, I understand that, and understanding how that will kind of work out and be in your kind of headspace, and how we see her view herself, and how she's telling these things to Sawako, and she's like, wow, she views herself completely differently. I see her as really kind and caring and compassionate and everything. And it's kind of cool to see those different... I wish that stuff was the more focus of the anime. Like, I don't mind the romance aspect, and I love certain romance anime that have that, but if you just focus on the Kazahaya and the Sawako kind of thing, you kind of do need a little bit of a breather. However, you don't need to do this thing in the 3rd season where you then plot dump everything on INA and having to try and build stuff up with her and Kento, and then doing the same thing with Chizuru and Ryu, where there's like an episode where just in the middle, she had to explain their entire childhood stuff, and I'm like, did we not get enough of this to have this set up in the first season? I understand trying to work through your feelings and understanding it more through Chizuru's perspective. That's not the problem here. I just think an inordinate amount of time was spent on just dumping it, and I'm like, okay, I understand that the turtle is a turtle. Why are we going into such granular detail about why its nut is like 3 times the size of a grapefruit? I mean, granted, if I saw a turtle with a nut that size, I'd be like, any reason? Radiation. Alright. Specific to Chernobyl from 1932 in a parallel dimension where a goat fucked a vampire and named itself God. And I'm like, we went completely off topic. We shot past Go. We didn't get $200. Now tell me more about this world, because that sounds a little bit more interesting than what's going on right here and right now. Granted, that never really happened in this anime. I'm like, I understand that we were told about this. Can we please move on and actually do something with this? And I do not begrudge building this and understanding them. And it's like, how many scenes do I have to see of Chizuru leaving Ryu rice balls, which I know he loves? I got it. Like, you only need to do it like 2 times max. 3 times if we're getting a little bit of it because of the rule of 3. Though I did think that it ended on an interesting one of understanding their relationships and how Sawako views everything going on with her friends and her boyfriend and all that. I do know that the manga goes a little bit further and gets them in college and what they're kind of doing and everything. But I really don't know if they've got enough to do another kind of season with this. Would I recommend this? I think that there's actually better romance anime out there. Comedy-wise, I would recommend it more for the first 2 seasons. 3rd season just gets onerous in how it is paced out and executed more than anything. If instead of 5 episodes, they had done 10 episodes at 30 a clip, I think it would have been a little bit better. Or the usual kind of 25... 23 kind of thing, kind of going on and everything, you know what I mean? It's just, you're just sitting, like, it's, there's certain times when you see certain kind of shows that have, like, elongated episodes, and you're like, did this episode deserve being this elongated and this long? Is it working, or is it bloated? Other show that I could say that was actually done at would be the 2024 Shogun. However, I didn't feel that was bloating it to like such an egregious degree that I'm like, I'm bored. And because there were things happening, there was like a better pacing and plot progression and execution of what was going on, where it wasn't just me getting sat in a room to understand the geopolitics of what's going on between Chizuru and Ryu. Even though I like that. But we're in the 3rd season, this is potentially the last one, and you're kind of taking up an entire kind of chunk of time to do this. So I'm like, yeah, can we just get them together? Now granted, I understand the journeys at that point, but I'm like, we got like 10 minutes, bro. You're spending 7 minutes on doing this. I'm not going to be at that destination long enough for me to fucking enjoy that shit. But I did like seeing Kazuhaya and Sawako actually sit down and talk about their problems. Because when she brought up that she was calling Kazuhaya a liar and everything, and then him fighting himself, it's like, you have to talk to her about this. You have to talk to anybody also about you. Well, 1, you have to talk to her about this. 2, you also have to talk to other people about this to understand what's going on in your brain. Because sometimes, trust me, sitting in your own head sometimes gets into you some weird fucking shit where you start spiraling on things. And then you do a course of action where you're like, you know what, I love my girlfriend, but I'm kind of obsessed and I don't know if I'd be able to stop myself, so I'm just going to cold turkey this shit and pretty much like distance myself. It's like, no, why don't you understand where she is, where she wants to physically go with the relationship, where you want to physically go with the relationship, and try and line those things up. Now, granted, I understand this is teen romance and everything, but that's not my problem with it. I understand that teen romance is you're essentially fucking around with a light socket to see who's gonna fucking take your ass out, to a degree, and then you just kind of learn how to fucking deal with it. That's not my issue. The issue is like the long kind of pauses on certain things, the long lingerings on certain kind of scenes that don't set really the mood for me. It's just more like, continue. And certain times just like sitting on certain kind of like, hey, we did this really good artwork. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I like that. But I would kind of like it to be a thing that just shows me the artwork. And if that was the objective where it's like photorealistic and everything, I'm like, well, not even photorealistic, but like drawing realistic of like what's kind of going on. Because the objective here for the plot is to understand the romance and everything going on with it. And those things didn't really exactly set the scenes for me. Exactly. It got more problematic as we got into this third season where it's like, we don't have time for this. Get us to where we need to go. Show us what's going on, my friends, my dudes. What is happening with the characters? And I did like the characters. I liked seeing Sawako's journey and progression. Kazuhaya's not so much, because she was mainly the anchor character. And I liked Chizuru, Ayane, even to a certain extent, Arai, because he actually started kind of growing himself as well. Like, I'm just dispensing wisdom to these people. After he's pretty much bribed Sawako to bribe the judges and then fucking himself over at sushi. Yeah, you little fucker. But yeah, I did pretty much like the characters. It's interesting enough that, like, I think Kazuhaya gets the kind of shortest shrift of what's going on. I think that we could have benefited from a couple of episodes where it's mainly from his perspective and we get more into his head, because we're mainly in Sawako's the whole time. Which is fine. She's a good protagonist. I like seeing her and understanding what's kind of going on with her head. But I didn't really like Kazuhaya that much because he's mainly playing the good guy, popular guy, and then he's like the obsessive kind of dude. And I think that's where I get most of my problems because of how it's done and executed. For that leads me to that kind of thing where it's like I'm mainly in Sawako's head, so of course I'm going to be more siding with her until she's like, I want to keep Kazuhaya all to myself. I'm like, girl, don't be that possessive and obsessive, please. But yeah, I don't think this is the worst one that I've seen. There's enjoyable stuff throughout them. I love seeing the chiviness and seeing Chizuru figure out what's kind of going on when Ayane and Sawako point this shit out to her. If you're into and looking for romance anime, you could do definitely worse than this one. Definitely recommend it on that front because I think they do pretty decent jobs with it overall. The characters are pretty decent. Plotting and world building. It's your typical slice of life. There's not going to be earth-shattering plot twists, betrayals, and all that kind of stuff. Kurumi you'll see from a mile off and be like, that bitch be trouble! As it's kind of going off. And then she pretty much gets kind of dropped. She was interesting for the rival kind of perspective, but after her storyline's done, they don't fucking do anything with her. And I kind of really wish they had to see if she, like, got over Kazuhaya and what was kind of going on in that front. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. Mainly on a mid-tier kind of basis, if that makes sense. If you've got other things that you're looking into and are looking forward to, go for those first. If you are completely and utterly bored out of your mind, definitely check this out. But it's a little bit above that of like, I need something to occupy my time. This is more of like, okay, I'm looking for something. Let me see what kind of goes on. There's other ones where it's like, yeah, you could just put this on in the background and be like, Though to a certain extent, I would say that you could do that for the kind of certain kind of episodes in this where you could just put it on in the background and be like, yeah. Are they done yet? All right, cool. There we go. So, yeah, those are my opinions on the seasons. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked them, if you didn't like them, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.